Okay, welcome to the Coat Way podcast, which is devoted to the idea that a team of people led by a good owner sharing best practices in a culture built on trust and respect will complete better projects. I'm Howie Ferguson. I'm executive director of COA, the Construction Owners Association. And today we're very happy to have a friend and literally one of the smartest guys I think in our industry, Steve Jones with Dodge Data and Analytics. Steve, without necessarily starting at birth, you want to give us the brief overview of your professional journey, where you are now, what you do, and how you got there.
Yeah, I'm so proud of when I played the starfish in the third grade school play. Come on. Oh, all right. I was in architecture for about 20 years. I got my MBA at an executive program at Wharton during that time. And one of the things that they make you do when you're studying strategy is evaluate your own industry. And I went, oh, this is not even an industry. This isn't even a real functioning business. This is crazy. So I was primed to look for other opportunities when one of my classmates got in touch with me and said he'd been hired by this big tech company in the construction industry. And he was a tech guy. They want me to drive the whole web initiative for them. This was right at the end of the century. And I know nothing about construction. I told him all about you, and they'd love to meet you. And so I'm living in Philadelphia at the time, and he said it's a company called Primavera. Well, of course, they're scheduling on every project under the sun. I figured they're probably in California or something. No, they're 8 minutes from my house. And so that bluebird doesn't fly through the transom that often. I went, this is it. Technology is my 21st century career. And so I spent several years with them, and that was a fabulous experience because, I'm running a big architectural firm. I think I know all about the business. Oh my goodness. Then I'm on a plane going to meet Bechtel doing some $12 trillion project someplace with 10,000 workers. I'm going, oh, this is the construction industry. So that was a really formative experience for me. And it also put me in touch with this global construction industry because, I was working in the greater Philadelphia area and Primavera is literally everywhere. And so I kept running into an old buddy of mine, another recovering architect named Norbert Young, at conferences here and there. And he encouraged me to come with him to what was McGraw-Hill Construction at the time and begin a research group because he said, what I constantly see everywhere is that although this is the biggest industry on the planet Earth, hardly anybody knows what's going on outside their own front yard because it's not like, as you know, all the owners get together at happy hour at the end of the day and exchange war stories. You're just blowing and going as fast as you possibly can to get the projects done that are on your plate and try and stay out of trouble and live for the next one. And so we are able to do this kind of quantitative deep dive research into all the trends that are going on, from sustainability to every kind of technology, to safety, to project delivery, to resource management, all the kinds of things that people are wrestling with. With the point being, why don't you look at what everybody else is doing, kind of find yourself on that curve someplace, and then see what the next few steps might be for you that other people are saying work, right? As opposed to just hoping for the best and winging it, right? And so we've had a fair amount of success building that practice. We've had hundreds of these reports, and they're all free because they're sponsored by folks who want us to go do that. And they can attach their brand to it so they pick up on the thought leadership benefits of it. But the idea is, can we help the industry understand itself a little bit better based on, to your point, all of our joint collective experience, not some smart person's theoretical academic idea. Oh no, let's find out, who's got the scars and who's got the successes, and let's do more of the successes and fewer of the scars together as an industry, just to accelerate the whole momentum. Because we are really in an interesting time. I don't think there's a more interesting time to be in this industry. We're probably about maybe halfway or about 30 or 40% of the way through what will be a complete digital transformation of the industry. I was drafting, man. HB lead on Mylar, standing in front of a sneaky blueprint machine, and I lived through the transition to CAD. And I thought CAD was the greatest thing ever. I mean, are you kidding, man? I just have to push a button and some machine over there has pens that start going like this in different colors. I'm going, dude, I love this. I make one change and suddenly it's like rippled through digitally. I'm like, I love this. And
Mhm.
so I became a real digital advocate, and I was very happy when my architectural firm was one of the first ones to do a BIM project. I said, this is very, very cool. And they didn't even call it BIM. So we're still calling it object oriented design, which comes from manufacturing. Because
Yeah.
you assemble a car or a ship or an airplane out of these intelligent objects, and you can simulate it virtually, right? I mean, it's been decades since Boeing built a physical prototype of an airplane that you could bong, bong, bong on. I mean, they could do it all digitally. So this is really just borrowing from those industries into our industry to think differently rather than drawing something and hoping the contractor understands what you drew, right?
So Steve, I want to come back to your time at Dodge and
Hmm.
look big picture. Um, but first, I have something that's more on career stuff because it just dawned
Mm.
on me. I knew this, but it never really sunk in. You and I have something in common in that you've actually done it twice. I've done it once, where kind of changed careers
Yep.
somewhat directly, somewhat
Mhm.
indirectly within the industry. And
Yep.
people our age or younger, maybe older, probably not, might wonder about such a move and have some fear because there's some, oh God. So can you just talk through first there was the jump from architecture to Primavera, and then the
Yeah.
jump from Primavera to, and not so much about maybe a little bit on the why, but the getting over the fear, just transitions to a different career and just reflecting on it. What are some thoughts you would share?
I think for me, especially with architecture to technology, I had just come to realize the limitations of my role. Even though I was a principal in one of the biggest AE firms in the country, we were doing amazing projects. I was always the guy at the table responsible for everything. You can't make perfect drawings. And people were basically waiting in the weeds to find imperfections in the drawings. And it was just kind of this continual, perpetual, isolated, very siloed approach where everybody was supposed to be on a project team, but everybody was there protecting their own, what, right? And it was just a grind. It got to be a grind. And you would get to finish a project, and we had an expression for it with every single project that applied to beautifully. Beautiful baby, horrible pregnancy. And for me, it's always been someone opened the door for me. And I'd gotten very friendly with this fellow in my class at Wharton. I trusted him, thought he was a real visionary. He got a job with what was clearly a very a prestigious technology company. He had a reason why he wanted me involved, and I said yes. And I just went fearlessly into it, figuring I can figure this out. All right. And so that has a lot to do with it, is you do have to believe that you'll be able to rise to the occasion, whatever it is, right? You have to have some confidence in yourself, but also to have someone, right, open that door for you is really meaningful. And the same thing, happened in coming to Dodge. It was Norbert Young. He had been he'd been sort of a competitor for a while in his architectural firm, and then he went to work as a developer, and I worked with him on a big project. And so we knew each other for years, and I trusted him. And I always thought, this guy feels like he's more than an architect. There's stuff going on there. And indeed, when he opened that door, I went, I trust myself. I trust him. This opportunity looks like it's a really good, just expansion for myself. And so not to be afraid of that. If you believe in your own capabilities, I think is really an important and valuable thing to do. Just keep moving forward.
Just keep swimming,
Just
finding
keep,
Nemo, man.
yeah, keep
Right?
rolling, baby. Keep rolling.
Yeah. Well, and I can, as you know, I can totally relate because I had no experience at all with nonprofit stuff. Professionals like Lucy had all that. But anyway, I think there is something to fearlessness, and I think there's something also to passion.
Yeah.
And I think it shows through in your work that passion for what you do really helps because not every day is great and not every person you work with is great, but boy, if your ticker beats a little harder about the subject, it kind of makes it uh, better.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
back to the work at Dodge, Steve. So you've lost count of how many reports and surveys and studies. I mean, the data is probably just but if you pull the plane up to 10,000 feet or kind of squint and just look at all
Mhm.
what is have all of these studies, maybe it's along the lines, I don't want to, ask a question and start the answer, but like maybe it's the old, cliche of the more things change, the more they stay the same, or some other. Can you draw any overall conclusions from all of this stuff and all of the cycles and all the reports? Like you just kind of squint and look back.
One of my perspectives that I actually got very early in my architectural career, but that has been continually compounded. I've never forgotten it. It has served me well, and it keeps being reiterated in all of these is that at the end of the day, in AEC, right, and I'll add the O, AECO in this industry, we can become very enamored of the material, the process, the equipment, the technology tools. This is a people business. These are human beings. And especially this business, because you're bringing a new group of them together every time you do any kind of thing called a project. Half of them never worked with the other half before, right? And so the natural tribal instinct is to hold back and to protect yourself. And one of the beauties of this increasingly integrated process, which technology is helping to and supporting, is that it's building much more trust. And even if I've never worked with you before, you seem to talk the same way I do. You seem to understand, and there's some structures we're all going to be part of. It may not be an actual IPD contract or something, but at least there's processes here that I'm used to doing in other projects where we're exchanging information freely. We've done it before, we're doing it more, we'll do it more again next time. We're getting to know each other more quickly. I don't have to worry first. We have to build that trust. Some of that trust is actually built into these new digitally integrated processes that are happening, right? But at the end of the day, it is just human beings,
Yeah.
right? All these other things are just here to serve the human beings coming together to actually jointly do a project. And these are still ideas from architects and engineers. There's still needs from owners. Yeah, it has its downside too, because human nature is what it is. We are risk averse beings. It's why we've actually survived from the jungles, right? We're still here because we know how to stay out of the way of the tiger. And the phrase that I like to use is that in this industry around anything innovative, everybody wants to be first to be third, right? You
Yeah.
try it and mess it up totally. Then you come in and figure out how what should have been done. Call me, baby. I'm all in,
Right.
because there's this. I remember having a conversation with an owner one time. He was with a Fortune 50 company. He's doing projects all over the world. He said, look, and I was trying to talk to him about BIM, right? And he's going, look, I got this corridor. I can see the door at the end of the corridor. I know how to get there today, and I know how to deal with the fact that any door may open at any time and a rabid Wolverine is going to come out and grab me. Right. And I know how to deal with that. But you want me to get on this jet propelled, star spangled roller rocket thing and go, and then I don't have that control. You're adding risk to what is already a risky situation for me.
Right.
That was a really interesting um, um, lesson for me because you realize that's where you have to begin. You have to begin to de-risk. And this is what I'm constantly preaching to every whiz bang guy who calls me up with his new whiz bang technology and wants Dodge to make it famous. I asked him two questions. I said, how does this de-risk? Who does it de-risk for? Right. And then I also oftentimes are construction apps, and I'll say, okay, it's Wednesday morning, 8:30 on a job site. You walk up to the superintendent and you say, would you like to use this? What's that person going to say? Are they going to get it immediately because they can see it's going to reduce their risk, it's going to increase productivity, or not? If you don't have that immediate connection, then you have technology in search of a solution. Go work on that and come back to me at that point when you've got something that every superintendent in America would go, I need it now.
Yeah, and
Give
of
it to
course,
me.
Steve, you and I know this is no offense to any software developers or super smart techies, but some, if not many of those folks have never been on a job site, may not know what a superintendent is. And so once again, it goes back to the people. How do you anyway, I love that you said people watching or listening to this may think, I know Koa. They probably told Steve this. I swear to God, there was no rehearsal, there was no prep. That was just from the
No.
heart. I love your answer, of course, because that's kind of why we exist, right? I think we figured out a few years ago, Koa, that when it comes to technical content, most folks, owners and others, are getting the super deep technical dive somewhere else. That's really not our sweet spot. Our sweet spot is more about team building and soft skills and leadership and all those sorts of things. To your point about it always comes down to the people. Yes, of course, let's be more efficient and be lean and use technology, but it's still a people business.
Yeah, I just helps the people. I mean, the way I learned that lesson was I was a very young architect, and I thought owners hired us because we have all the answers. Otherwise, they'd have done this themselves, right? And so I'm stuck with this sort of challenge on a project that I'm working on the design of, and I don't know what to do. And I asked my old grizzled project manager, who might have been all of 45 or something at the time, yeah, what do I do? She says, pick up the phone, call the client, explain the situation, and ask them what they think we should do. But we're supposed to know within that. With it. She looked at me. She goes, "This is a people business. Pick up the phone." I was terrified to do so. I did it. I called this guy, and he was delighted to be asked.
Yeah,
He was thrilled.
yeah,
He had a good solution, and he had a reason why it was a good solution, which helped me learn a whole lot more about what they're trying to achieve. I
yeah.
just worked on every possible level. I never forgot it. And it has been true every single day since then. This is a people business.
Yeah, and Steve, just again to reflect on my time as an owner, if you had been that architect and I had been that owner, I would have loved that you called me because A, it would show me a sense of humility. I don't want to hire someone that has all the answers. That's not, I want to hire someone who listens and is
Yes.
technically competent to then be able to create solutions, et cetera. But uh, good listening, I always thought was a way bigger strength for a designer than having all the answers. So,
And the humility that you mentioned is important because it's not always found in my former profession.
right. Really?
Yes.
Yeah, no, yeah. Hey,
Just
one last
saying.
one for you. We've
Yeah.
kept you long enough, but I do have one more that, again, I think could be applicable to certainly to just about anybody in our industry and probably other industries too. And I know because of your three very, really different careers, I know you've dealt with this, Steve. How do you, uh, I'm not talking so much home life, in the professional context, things don't always go well. There are conflicts. For me, for example, my typical way, and it doesn't always work well, to diffuse tension or conflicts is with sarcastic humor. That's just my thing. It blows up in my face sometimes, but it's my thing. So, um, how do you deal with difficult people or tense situations? What could someone listening to this maybe learn from a pro like you when it comes to those tough moments?
Hmm. Um, I will share that I probably, because I tend to be quick and clever, I will also do what you typically do and find some wry remark to make. But what I've learned more recently, and especially from my partner, who's a chaplain at a major hospital working in the oncology and organ transplant areas where
Wow.
success is not as common as in other areas, right?
Right. Right.
And so she has to walk into a room full of very concerned family members and find the spiritual angle to begin to tie people together with and talking about. She uses a phrase which is very, I think, applicable, which is get in the boat with them,
Mm.
right? First, if there's three people aren't agreeing on something, you first have to validate that you understand why it is that they're saying that. It's somewhat like my story about getting on that rocket propelled thing. You're just adding risk for me. That was getting in the boat with that person first to say, let's look at what those risks are, and then let's look at this thing within that context. Get in the boat with that person or both those other people and say, I understand what you're saying and why you're coming from, not just you're wrong, because then things just freeze up, right? There's nowhere to go with that. you invite that, you allow them to invite you into their position. And that, I think, is the way that common ground can then be found,
Right.
and solutions to move forward, without having to, all right, I'm going to get my contract and my lawyer's going to call your lawyer.
So, Steve, that's once again, not rehearsed. And not only is that a fabulous answer, but without even trying, you just added a whole giant helping of context, because at the end of the day, the tension I was picturing, in our workplace, like, hey, Mr. Engineer, this mechanical system's too expensive, or, whatever else. Let's contrast that with your partner's day, like,
Yeah.
hold my beer, she might say. I mean, seriously, what she's dealing with. And so
Yeah.
awesome perspective, and also a great
Yeah,
answer.
because what you might want to do is find out what is it that led you to make that suggestion to me of that system. We understand, we all know it's too expensive. Why did you want it in the first place? Because it wasn't done on a whim, or if it was done on a whim, at least then that will be exposed for what it was. But there's probably some rational reason for it, and you say, I appreciate that. There are aspects of that we can, to me, the owner, these two aspects are the ones that let's try and maintain. The rest of them I can live without. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
rethink that, right? But you've gotten in the boat with them, and you've shown some respect for where they were coming from initially, not just you're wrong, go fix it.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. And I'm picturing someone standing on the dock. They're not rocking in the water. They're just criticizing the people who are in the boat. It's a whole lot different when you get in there and, oh, well,
Yes.
this is kind of stormy in here, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome
Yeah.
stuff, Steve. You are a delight to talk to, and we love you here at COA. Thank you. Hope to see you again soon.
Oh,
And
you
thanks
will.
for your
You will.
time.
All right, bye.